It's been a lot of fun over the last month or so reviewing classic shows that took place in the month of August across multiple companies. I looked at WCW Road Wild 99, then it was TNA Hard Justice 2006. I did want to review at least one classic Summerslam before the month was out, and I decided to go back to the year 2007. Now, last time I was in this timeline, it was Great American Bash 07. It was the first pay-per-view after Chris Benoit did what he did, and how the company was trying to bounce back from that creatively and also from a really bad PR standpoint. And so we're going to get a better look now at how WWE is recovering, or at least trying to, in the wake of this massive scandal, as we look at SummerSlam 2007 from August 26th at the Continental Airlines Arena in East Rutherford, New Jersey. This show was nominated by Alex Sullivan over at patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. So in this post-Benoit world, WWE tries to move forward by, doing some inward thinking, taking a look at, the culture that they have helped perpetrate in the world of wrestling, and maybe trying to see how they could better themselves, and in doing so, better the wrestling world. Just kidding, they didn't do any of that at first. They were very much kind of like, oh, look at that over there. Oh, don't listen to that. Don't ask that question. Hey, everyone, it's the return of Mr. McMahon. Oh, yes, that's right. Vince is back in an official on-air capacity for the first time since he was blown to smithereens in that limo explosion. He comes back and basically says, well, I faked it all. It was all a big show because I wanted to know whether or not you all cared about me, because I might be an evil son of a bitch, but deep down, I have feelings too. And so basically, in kayfabe, McMahon faked his own death to see how people would react and show love and appreciation for him, which is pretty messed up. But then it turns into a thing where, well, I'm gonna go after my family because the way they responded to the death, makes me question their loyalties to me, and it's all about the money. And so, Mr. McMahon, post-limo explosion, he's got hot takes on the government and government agencies that are, asking questions about him and his dealings after what happened with Benoit. Like, oh, these evil government, can you believe they're gonna ask me questions? Oh, the tenacity, the temerity of these government agencies, Congress, boo, and the news media, they're so bad how they, ask questions. And so then after he spends that whole episode of his return on Raw, criticizing the government and the media for daring to ask him questions, then they pivot to the next part of the storyline where Vince is in the middle of a paternity suit, where some mystery woman alleges that he has sired an illegitimate son many years ago, who is now currently in the WWE locker room as a superstar. Like, oh my God, what are the odds that could possibly happen? And so immediately everyone is going, oh my God, it's going to be Ken Kennedy. It's got to be. That's what everyone kind of thought it would be from the start when they were planting the seeds. And sure enough, we get all these moments where Vince and Kennedy just like share looks, and the crowd's like, hey, we know what's happening next. And then, all this teasing. And so for weeks now, McMahon and Jonathan Coachman are on the search to try and find out who the mystery star could be. And so there's this constantly, and we're going to see this on the show tonight as well, constant bits where Vince is just interacting with different members of the roster. It's like, maybe they're the son. Maybe that person's the son. And so we have a combination of people, like all these people coming out and proclaiming, no, I'm your son, Vince. This Vince McMahon on air is so different than any other version of Vince you'll ever see. And in some ways that's okay, but other ways it just makes it just feel very weird. So what else is going on? Bobby Lashley is out of action with an injury, but he's actually done with the company for many years now. William Regal is officially the new general manager of Raw. He won a battle royal on the same episode Mr. McMahon came back, and so his first official act as GM is like, oh, I've always wanted to host a game show. And so they just have a version of the dating game on the show, like apropos of nothing. Like, where is this coming from Regal to have this idea? In fairness, the segment is pretty funny because you've got like Hacksaw Jim Duggan as one of the bachelors, and the 2x4's got a tie, and there's this moment he goes, oh, gotta take the wedding ring off right on camera. And you've got, Ron Simmons, and he only speaks in words that rhyme with damn. at this point. Like, I don't know, he's taken so much brain damage over the years. It's all he can muster anymore in his career. And then you've got Santino Marella, who's just kind of there to be the comic, well, even more of a comic foil, because he's Maria's boyfriend, and he's just going, I'm in constant pain. And like, he's not full-blown goofy yet, but boy, he is just really hurtling down that way. We also have some big return angles to look forward to tonight, as both Raw and SmackDown have spent the last 5 weeks desperately trying to convince you that Triple H and Rey Mysterio's respective opponents pose any kind of threat to them. Speaking of which, the tagline reads, "The party is over," and the poster is just a big old picture of Triple H's mug. Yeah, that about sums it up. There's the opening hype package for the show. It's really all over the place in terms of mood and vibes, trying to convey like the seriousness of their more dramatic storylines while also going, it's a sexy hot party. Like, I love like the tone in the narrator in the first like 3 storylines. Starts out, you know, peppy, and then just gets aggressively darker every time. It's like, ba ba ba, Rey Mysterio, then ba ba ba, great Khali and Batista, then ba ba ba, Randy Orton and Cena. And then, of course, Triple H is the $6 million man. See, I'm like Steve Austin, but better. 17,441 people in attendance. This bad boy sold out in 40 minutes way back in January. Michael Cole and Gibbles are on commentary for SmackDown, and they're not partners, Maggle. Jim Ross and Jerry King, Jerry the Lawler, are on the call for Raw, and representing ECW, it's Joey Styles and Taz. Tag Team Championships, what are those? Who are they? Deuce and Domino? Caden Murdoch? Nah, we don't need any of those guys on this show. How's about this for starters, as we have Kane taking on Finlay. They've been at each other's throats since the Great American Bash, and then I almost got flashbacks when Cole says, this all started over a cup of coffee. Like, no, it's Kane and Jericho in 2000 again. But it was like Finlay knocked Jamie Noble into Kane, and the coffee spilled onto Kane, and that's how they all started fighting. And then a few weeks ago, Finlay beat Kane down with his shillelagh. So Kane asked Mr. McMahon for this matchup, and that's how we get here. The action starts out with lots of strikes being thrown, Kane just grinding and stomping away at Finlay. Fit goes up top, but Kane hits him, and Finlay takes a big old tumble. Kane goes up top, Finlay cuts him off, begins to attack those ribs. Nice and enziguri by Kane. He starts mounting this big offensive run, hits the diving clothesline, but the rib damage does slow him down. Finlay hits the big sit. He goes to the outside, reaches under the ring, and it's Hornswoggle, the current Cruiserweight champion and Finlay's leprechaun friend. He gets excited, but then Kane sits up. The little bastard with the distraction, but he fights back. He tries to goozle Finlay, but he doesn't have the strength to get him up for the chokeslam. I love this part here where Finlay's just like clubbing and beating Kane down while he's still getting choked, finally getting him down into a DDT. That was cool. Finlay pressing R1 to take the turnbuckle pad off. He grabs his shillelagh, but Kane now goes for it. The ref takes that one away, but Hornswoggle has a backup shillelagh. He decks Kane in the ribs, but it's still not enough to put him away. Kane digs down deep for the chokeslam and gets the win. I give it 2.5 stars out of 5. I think it was a short-ish but sweet physical matchup. They threw a lot of gaga in there, you know, for the amount of time they had with not only Hornswoggle, but also the shillelagh, chicanery, as it were. It was, it was fine for what it was. Backstage, all the authority figures are hanging out in the Summerslam party room. Okay, kids, you have an hour to eat all the cake and pizza you want, and then it's time for the trampoline room. Mr. McMahon says he hears that the mother of his bastard son may be there tonight, and you can identify her by having a, quote, necrotic, infectious womb, whatever the hell that all means, followed by her hands out like this looking for a payday. That's just weird. Then in barges Santino Marella, who starts singing, "Oh my papa," and is kicked out. MVP then walks in, and he's here to complain about Teddy Long not having him involved on the card. He says he wants to challenge Matt Hardy to something not wrestling, and then walks away. Then we get a moment where Regal insinuates that maybe he could be Vince's son, and then Vince tells Coach, "I wouldn't do an Englishman with yours," and then Coach cuts him off. Like, what's he talking about there? Like I said, Vince is so weird in all these segments about searching for the bastard son. Like, think about evil Vince, like evil veins bulging out of his forehead, fiery red face, that kind of Mr. McMahon. You are not getting that. And like, even like what he was like prior to the limo explosion, when he was still like angry and like going crazy from getting his head shaved and whatnot. No, he's really just more subdued and bizarre. And you're gonna see a lot more of it here. as this night in particular goes on. And I know that like they're definitely creatively scrambling in the wake of what happened with Chris Benoit and his family, but at least when it comes to this storyline, you just know Brian Gewirtz is having the time of his life right now, putting Vince in these very weird situations. Intercontinental Championship triple threat as Umaga defends against Mr. Kennedy and Carlito. That's where all three of these guys end up when one of your big crossover plans ends up going belly up. Originally, Umaga was supposed to be taking on the cast of Jackass in a handicap match at Summerslam. There was early promotional material to suggest this. There was a whole segment that they did on Raw months before this where Umaga does single-handedly beat up all the Jackass guys, which becomes infamous because Steve-O is not selling it on that one. He's just laughing, which just causes Umaga to beat him up even more. So ultimately, the Jackass crew, they back out after the Benoit tragedy and all the negative press surrounding WWE. So they have to creatively scramble for that now. And so you've got Kennedy and Carlito, who aren't really doing anything right now at the moment. They're just kind of lumped into this matchup. And it's weird because all three of them, to my understanding, are heels. Umaga starts out by throat thrusting both men, Carlito with a mouthful of apple made for a funny moment. Kennedy and Carlito having a hard time getting their act together and slowing the big man down. They finally wear him down and they fight each other. But here's a thought. Why couldn't those two just agree beforehand, hey, let's dispose of Umaga and then we'll do paper, rock, scissors or something where we just one of us pins the other really fast, gets out of there with the championship, and then we can promise the other person a title shot right afterward. The logic in this matchup makes no sense to me, and it's gonna really, just mess with me the entire time I'm watching this. Because, look, Kennedy and Carlito, if they can't just beat him down and incapacitate him to the point where they can have their own match for a long time, which happens a little bit in this, then they should just be chicken shit heels and collude and just fuck Umaga over, and he's not going to be any worse off for that. Anyway, Umaga later KOs himself by running into the turnbuckle, and Kennedy grabs a monitor from the announce table, and wow, he hits that ring post good and hard with it. No surprise, it's not enough for Carlito to pin him. Kennedy ends up hitting the Green Bay plunge on Lito, but Umaga comes back in, grabs Ken, hits his thumb of doom, and wins to retain. I give it 2.5 stars out of 5. I thought the action was okay, as illogical as it felt to me at times. I also felt that the finish was very similar to the Triple Threat X Division Championship match I just covered on Hard Justice, but at least Umaga got his own move in, before pinning the guy. I also wonder what a Jackass Crew versus Umaga match would have looked like. It's too bad we never got that, but it is a good thing that we eventually did get closure on Johnny Knoxville wrestling in WWE all the way in 2022. Coming up next, the much anticipated return of Rey Mysterio as he takes on the guy who took him out of action back in October in Chavo Guerrero. Of course, this is a continuation of the feud that took place after Chavo cost Rey Mysterio the world title the previous year. They had the I Quit match on SmackDown, leading to Rey being written off with that knee injury. There's news of him coming back, and of course, that leads to Chavo getting back on his bullshit and mocking Rey every step of the way. He's got the mask out, he's wearing it to the ring, he's trying to ape his moveset, really just trying to, really rub salt on the wound and reminding everyone that he's the one, who took out Rey Mysterio. He's gonna do it again when he comes back. Chavo's making his entrance, and hey, did you know that Guerrero means warrior? You certainly learned that anytime you watch JBL call a Chavo match. And then we get an extended version of Booyaka Booyaka, we have some pyro, and then boom, the toaster lift. Who's that jumping out the sky? Silversurfer, Mysterio, here we go. What a great psychological ploy coming out covered in silver body paint. Because anytime you touch him, you're just gonna get covered in your hands and on your gear. You hope it washes out easily, at the very least. Also, JBL really hams it up on commentary when Rey Mysterio's out here. A great line where he says, Chavo is going to keep going after the knee until he can get it or he can't get it. Like, wow, brilliant insight. These guys can't really have a bad match. They've wrestled hundreds of times over the years, and they're always pretty brilliant. Rey with the first flying attack to the outside gets a nice reaction. Chavo catching Rey on the top turnbuckle. Rey falls into the tree of woe. Shades of I quit. He starts attacking that leg with great fervor. Rey with a desperation shot sends Chavo into the 619 position, but Rey can't capitalize. Chavo attacks with a half crab ball game maggle. Rey eventually grabs the ropes. I like this counter Rey has mid-slam here. Now Rey's got Chavo in the tree and he starts going after the leg. The flying sit to the outside, another one back on the inside. Rey goes to the cross body but gets none of it. Chavo hitting the gory special. JBL once again says ball game. Rey kicks out. Rey tripping up Chavo into the ropes. He goes for the 619 again but can't connect. Chavo goes for 2 of the 3 amigos. Rey counters the third with a head scissors. Dial it up, Cole. Rey with the splash and the win. I give it 4 stars out of 5. It's a lovely grudge match, and I think any time during this period you ever wanted to reset Rey Mysterio or to show, man, this is what he can do, you put him with Chavo Guerrero. I mean, it worked so many times before, and I love the fact that, you've got that athleticism and the styles that work so well together, but then you have the extra layer of the history and what happened the year before leading into this, and so it all works out really well. I think Chavo and Rey, they can have a great match in their sleep, and yeah, this was easily one of the highlights of the evening for me. Todd Grisham backstage with his trusty parrot co-host and their guest, King Booker with Queen Sharmell. Booker says that Rey's fairy tale return will pale in comparison to the return of Triple H, which will be a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. And he says that he knows Triple H is going to have a grand entrance. People are going to stand and cheer for him, so he should drink that in. It's going to be the high point of his night because by the end, he will bow down to King Booker. Great promo there. We go to our next matchup. It's the Divas Battle Royal featuring all these ladies listed, and the winner is going to get a future shot at the women's champion, that being Candice Michelle. This is back in the day when you didn't have to be thrown over the top rope to be eliminated if you were a lady. And way to show a close-up of the fans literally leaving to go to the bathroom during introductions. A lot of ladies working the corners, working the ropes, Beth Phoenix just dumping Brooke straight to the floor. Not much for commentary to call in this match, not that they're really paying much attention and actually calling things when things are happening. Michelle McCool with a lot of hesitation in her strikes all match. She accidentally takes out Crystal. Jerry Lawler talking about all the screaming and the moaning going on in the match. Mickey almost eliminates herself. Out goes Jillian Hall. Then Melina takes out Mickey. We eventually get down to Kelly, Beth Phoenix, and Michelle McCool, and it kind of looks like that Spider-Man meme. We're down to the Glamazon and McCool. Beth dumps her out in short order and wins the Battle Royal. I'm going to give this one a half star out of 5. I think they really could have used a bit more. Oh, never mind. We are not letting this rest for long before U.S. Champion MVP's music plays and some extras are following him with a cooler. He says, nobody bought a ticket to see these ladies. Wow, times have changed, haven't they? MVP is still in his feud with Matt Hardy, and that's going to be a long-standing thing between the two of them for a while because, they had their matches on SmackDown and at Great American Bash. Recently, MVP has been taken, he's put on the shelf saying he has a heart condition so he can't wrestle, but he's still been able to, compete with Matt Hardy in other ways, essentially, and trying to screw Matt out of those various things. Like they had a boxing competition and he brought in Evander Holyfield as like a pinch hitter at the last minute, which is kind of messed up. They had the basketball competition as well. And so what we're having here this evening is the beer drinking contest. MVP talks about how when he grew up, he was growing up poor, and so he was used to drinking beer back then, but now that he has the finer things in life, he has a taste for things like, Cristal and Louis XIV, and so he knows he's better than all these people, but he's going to lower himself to a beer drinking contest. At the time I'm recording this, we are just now at the point where MJF has just been kicked out of the Hurt Syndicate, but I think that whole courtship and where MVP and MJF bring up their past together, it's so interesting because you watch this early MVP and, you know, you can see MJF took a lot of inspiration, I think, from this particular version of MVP because he's literally, the part of his whole shtick is saying he's better than you. And I'm waiting for him to say, and you know it. So out comes Matt Hardy for the beer drinking contest. There's a big "We Want Austin" chant. So I think the fans already kind of know where this is headed. Hardy talks about the competitions they've been having. You know, you win some, you lose some, and that's going to be the nature of it. But to say that you're better than me or anyone else, that's wrong, man. And, you know, Matt puts himself over as a common man, gets a nice pop, and he says, well, you know, since you picked a substitute for that boxing match, like for this one, I've picked a suitable substitute myself, one of the best beer drinkers in WWE, and the glass breaks. You all know what's coming out here. It's Stone Cold Steve Austin. Huge pop for his entrance. Matt Hardy takes his leave because goodness knows this is not about him. Austin does some warm-ups before drinking. He runs the ropes, which is hilarious. Takes a long time to line up the beers, very meticulous. Then, wham, stunner to MVP. And that's the segment. Well, tell me who the hell that was for. Like, what story are you progressing there? You're just like, it's an excuse to bring Austin out and get a cheap pop for that. And like, yeah, you're showing MVP what for, and like, Matt's getting a little bit of revenge, but like, again, this is about Austin getting his shit in. Like, Matt Hardy doesn't look any better from doing this himself. There's that unused WrestleMania 24 logo again. Back in the party room, Mr. McMahon is wondering where that woman's supposed to be. In come Crime Time, Shad and JTG, and they say, hey, Mr. McMahon, maybe one of us could be your sons. And we have a lot in common because we all like that money, money, yeah, yeah. And they do that chant over and over again. And suddenly everyone begins to lose themselves in it. And they just start just chanting and marching in a circle. There's Teddy Long joining the line. There's the coach. And then finally, Willie Reegs doing his little dance, wearing the hat. Oh my God, what a tremendous Summerslam moment that is. You know, that's an evergreen clip. You can put it to anything with a 4-4 time signature. It's just, you see he's having the time of his life, that big smile on his face, doing the dance and everything. And then he finally turns around to see Ron Simmons, who says, damn. Well, you know what? That's actually one of my favorite parts of the whole show. You know, put that on a loop. That's just, that's an OMG moment. For the ECW Championship, John Morrison once again defends against Charles Montgomery Punk. It's part of the ongoing, never-ending feud between them ever since Vengeance. And, you know, by now, Morrison is fully leaned into the Jim Morrison-like status and the look, the verbiage, the hype package they're showing for this match is pretty great because it's putting some of the crazier lines that Morrison has said in the last couple of months, like in the saying, I am a portal to infinite wisdom. You are temporary, fleeting, a footnote to an average reality. Like, man, just burning them with these 2-bit phrases. Morrison has been having a 15 minutes of fame segment on ECW where basically if you can survive for 15 minutes or beat me in that time period, you get a title match. And finally, CM Punk shows up, beats him in one of those challenges, so he's earned the right to once again fight for the title here. And like, this has been going on for ages now, because it started technically at Vengeance when Johnny Nitro filled in for Chris Benoit, and they've been spending all this time with Punk and Morrison just going back and forth, and you know, Morrison won at the Great American Bash. This is pretty much the only angle worth following on ECW at this point, and you would think, it being SummerSlam, it having gone as long as it has, this feels like the time for Punk to finally get his moment, right? There's some quick backy-forthy to start things off. They fight their way to the apron. Morrison with a big old neck breaker on the way to the floor. Hard landing for Punk. Back in the ring, Punk fights out of a chin lock. This great run of offense and some close calls. Even a top rope moonsault by Punk. How often have we ever seen him do that? I feel even his standard like top rope elbow drop that he would do in his later years, in his first run there, had me recoiling with fear. So to see him do a moonsault, like, oh, Jesus! Punk goes for a top rope Hurricane Rana. Jomo blocks it. He goes for the cover. He's barely able to make contact with the ropes for it to look like he's doing anything. The champion retains. I'm going to give it 3 stars out of 5. That match was fine up until the end. And like, wow, for 2 months in a row, you've made Punk look like kind of an idiot on pay-per-view. Like, this one, not really his fault, because Morrison was supposed to get his feet on the ropes. He didn't, and so it just looked like he was just covering Punk and he couldn't kick out. And you think about last month, where the way that match ended is like, yeah, like this is just, this is part of what they did. It wasn't just a CM Punk. I felt like they were just doing this for a long time, where they would take, you know, people who were fan favorites, whether or not they were like from the internet or whatever, but they would just take people who were over and like, you know, just beat them down, just have them lose again and again, because their mindset was people are still going to rally behind them if they keep losing and losing. Like, no, they're going to eventually just get bored and you're going to have a guy who loses all the time. Up next, it's King versus King, Booker versus Hunter. Back in January, Triple H injured his other quad muscle in DX's match with Rated RKO. He was out for a while. They are starting to hype his return, and they've been planting this seed for a while now, as King Booker starts showing up, complaining about Triple H returning, and he's the one true King. He's been in this kind of holding pattern feud with Jerome Lawler over the title of King in the weeks leading up to this. He forced James Ross to kiss the ring, and boy, you gotta love that one of the top storylines on Raw involves a guy who's not gonna be on TV until the pay-per-view. So the other guy who's definitely losing has to do all the legwork in it. You know, it'd be one thing if Triple H returned to TV and they kind of built through that, but you know, when he's coming back at the pay-per-view, it becomes super obvious. I can't wait to get, you know, Mania 19 flashbacks watching this match. Booker making his entrance. Looks like his head is briefly on fire for a second. We show the $6 billion man thing again. I'm kind of over it at this point. It's a big old grandiose video package with all sorts of badass trips, clips. Then we get some pyro. Then it's him, the Game. He's back, baby. He's all fists from the get-go until Booker slows things down a bit and powders. We get some back and forth. Sharmell with the trip up on trips. That allows Booker to get on the attack and take over. He goes after the surgically repaired leg. Hunter fights back and he puts on a figure 4. That makes sense, but Sharmell rakes the eyes of Triple H with the referee not looking. We start getting some yay boos, more beating by Triple H on the outside. Back in the ring, Triple H hits the spine buster. Booker recovers, hits the bookend, but not enough. The King goes up top. He goes for the Harlem Hangover, but gets none of it. Triple H with the crotch chop, goes for the pedigree. Booker fights out. We get another pedigree anyway, the 3 count, and you can still see Booker bringing his arm up just a little near the end. You'd love to see it. That said, I'm going to give it 2.5 stars out of 5. It's an easy return moment, slam dunk of a thing for him to come back against the hated Booker T, who is a great opponent for Triple H, makes him look good. You knew the outcome was never in doubt, so at least, you know, the story they told along the way was fine. Up next for the World Heavyweight Championship, the Great Khali defense against Batista. As we mentioned in the Great American Bash review, Edge got hurt and the world title was held up. Khali won a Battle Royal on SmackDown to become the champion, and then he had the title defense at the Bash. And now we move on to this one-on-one affair where Batista is challenging to get his title back against the Big Giant. But really, all this, in my opinion, this feud is known for, is for basketballs don't hold grudges. There's a great moment on SmackDown where Batista's talking about the Great Khali and how he's going to get him. And then we see Khali and his manager, one of the WWE writers, Ranjin Singh, talking to him. And Khali's got a basketball and he's demonstrating the strength of his giant vice grip as he deflates the ball and finally pops it, as Singh describes in graphic detail all the brains and blood and pus that's going to ooze out of all of his orifices. And so he shows the basketball, he pops it, and Batista goes, well, the thing is, basketballs don't hold grudges, and you're not going to be wrestling a basketball at SummerSlam, which at once was a badass comeback, but also the funniest fucking thing he could have said. Because I remember being on like the fan boards at that time, and man, that created a whole cottage industry of Batista basketball memes. That kept the internet afloat for like 5 years after that, I think, was Batista as a basketball, Batista using basketballs as a weapon. Yeah, I mean, that was an amazing line, and it created some amazing content. Basketballs, you're right, they do not hold grudges, but Batista does, and he's not a basketball. Khali looks like he's barely able to walk as he shuffles to the middle of the ring as the match begins, but he starts out on the offensive, some elbows in the corner. Khali's hand is described in this matchup as a skillet and an NFL football, which are two very different shapes. Bats is bumping his butt off for Khali so far. Dave tries to fight back, but he runs right into the deadly brain chop. Khali is behind Batista and locks in the shoulder claw. Like, dude, you had him for the vice grip right there. Just do it. Batista fights out, gets back in the claw. He fights out, he gets back in the claw. JBL is saying the quiet part out loud, where he describes Khali as monkey but ugly. And he says this match is not pretty, but his style is effective. Finally, Khali goes for the basketball killer, but Batista blocks it. He manages to pick him up with a spine buster. Batista goes for a flying nothing, but Khali catches him, hits the Khali bomb, and finally does a real cover, but Batista kicks out. Ranjin Singh grabs a steel chair and Khali gets a hold of it. Then he just hits Dave with it and gets himself disqualified. The fans are not happy. The Great Khali swings the chair again, but Dave hits him with the spear, then grabs the chair, whomps Khali with it, and sends the fans home happy. That is one of the worst Summerslam matches, for a world title or not, in history. But hey, at least we got some basketball memes out of it, so, you know, it balances out. Backstage, VKM is with the coach wondering, where is that woman? Regal says the woman is here, and it's Mae Young and the fabulous Moolah. Oh, I haven't seen those old bats in a while, but they say she's not here with a bastard son. She wants him to help make a new one, of course. Vince tries to let her down gently, but Mae's having none of that. Gotta admit, the irony of sexual assault as a punchline aside, I think Vince's selling is pretty hilarious as Moolah grabs Mae by the hair to pull her off. Regal's just flopping all over the place for no reason. They escort her out, and then we get to see Vince just weirdly smacking his lips for a good 30 seconds, and he goes, "Old chicken makes good soup." And then JR with the line of the night saying, "I'm never eating chicken soup again as long as I live." Main event time for the WWE Championship as John Cena defends against Randy Orton. And you might not believe it for how long this whole thing lasted, but this is actually the first major encounter in their rivalry. Cena is the controversial but dominant WWE Champion, which translates to most of the fans hate his guts, despite him being a babyface. And then Orton is still on a great, legend-killing run, most recently having destroyed Dusty Rhodes at the Great American Bash and the night after. And they basically assigned Orton the #1 contender the night after Great American Bash, so it's been 5 weeks of build. I think when this angle was going on, I was still kind of in my bummed out on WWE phase, and so I don't think I appreciated this moment for what it was, considering Cena and Orton were always kind of pegged to be these two generational equals, and we're getting it here, and so I don't think I appreciated it back then, but now today looking back, this is kind of a big moment in their feud. And boy, those boos are coming in hot and heavy for Cena here. The crowd is overwhelmingly on Orton's side for this one. Cena and Orton trading simple headlocks and punches, that gets some big reactions. Orton going to the chin lock early at one point. Cena goes for a shoulder tackle. I love the way Orton just falls out of the way and Cena flies in the air for a moment. He gets launched off the apron, landing right into the announce table. Big old chin lock by Randy. John finally fights out of it with a suplex. Out come the Garvin stomps. He goes for that final knee drop, but Cena dodges it. But we get a power slam by Orton and back to the chin lock. He fights out of it again. Drop kick, back to the chin lock. Cena finally creates some separation to start hitting his moves of doom, a rousing chorus of boos with some light cheering peppered in. Orton hits that draping DDT, but Cena somehow kicks out. Oh my God, the shock, considering all the other people who have fallen to that move over the years. Cena takes some damage on the outside, then comes back and hits a front-facing throwback. That looked a little rough. At one point when things are looking pretty dire for Cena, JR says losing is the ultimate American sin, which is a really bleak phrase when you think about it. Orton lines up for his punt. He goes for it, but Cena dodges it and locks in the STFU. We get a rope break, which gets a huge pop. Randy hits his KO, but he's slow to cover. Cena kicks out. They both get up. Cena catching him with the FU, the cover and the win. Cena retains, and that's how we wrap up the show. I give it 4 stars out of 5. Similar to how I felt about the Cena-Lashley match the previous month at Great American Bash, I kind of went into this one with very low expectations. I mean, I knew they were going to have, tell a good story. Their mutual similar upbringings in OVW and how often their careers have kind of passed or crossed tells me that they were going to be good. And I think Orton's a great opponent for Cena. Made him look really strong in that victory for John. And I think that it was another big win for him, despite what the crowd is reacting to him at the time. I think, still a really solid match. That said, my grade for Summerslam 2007 is a C+. It is not one of the stronger SummerSlams by any means. I mean, 2007, the summer of 07, is a really rough time. And at this point, the company is very much business as usual, head down, keep looking forward. But business is really bland right now. I mean, they went with a really, except for the Mr. McMahon storyline, everything else on this show is as bland and inoffensive and risk averse as you can possibly be. And on one hand, I can understand why they're doing that, but it's solid, it's dependable, it's not necessarily good, and it's not a great distraction. It's just like they're trying to, be as, I think it's an attempt to be as boring as possible, because the last thing they want to do is ruffle any feathers with their content right now. So yeah, it's a very strange time, and as I can recall, it's only going to get weirder. But what did you think of SummerSlam 07, and how about this review? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, hit that bell icon for all the notifications. Folks, the next time I come back with a classic pay-per-view review, we're going back to my favorite time period of WCW in the year 2000. We are continuing to finish the story this year, and we're going to make a stop at Fall Brawl 2000. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.